We are just one episode away from Dragon Ball Super episode 100, which takes us one episode closer to our Dragon Ball Super episode 100 special. But before we get there, we have a lot to talk about episode 99 and everything good and bad about it. So without wasting any more time, let's break down episode 99 of Dragon Ball Super. So starting off with the good, I would have to say one of the strongest elements about this episode would have to be featured around the opening and the reaction of characters after Universe 9 was just wiped out. The episode opens up with a lot of still shots of the characters as you're capturing their facial expressions as they're reacting to what just happened, with Universe 9 being erased right in front of their very eyes. And to tell you the honest truth, guys, this reminds me a lot about The Walking Dead, where you would watch an episode where a character that you just knew was literally killed on the previous episode, and all of the characters are now reacting to that character's death in the next episode. And I think the one character that really showed how powerful this moment was the most would have to be Shin, or the Supreme Kai from our universe in Universe 7, as you see him sweating and seeing how he's grabbing his kneecaps as he watched that universe being erased right there on the spot. So that was a great reaction to open up this episode. And to add more towards this, I also thought it was pretty strong to show all of the Dragon Ball characters in the Tournament of Power stopping their fight against each other as they were sitting back and watching exactly what was happening with Zeno and the Grand Priest, and it gives them motivation to continue fighting even harder so that they wouldn't end up the same way Universe 9 was. But to move on to a more serious note, I think the dialogue between Android 17 and 18 was also interesting, as it foreshadows a lot of what we should expect in Dragon Ball Super, as 17 was talking to 18 and saying how them as androids, they have nothing to worry about because with their infinite energy they can fight as long as they need to, which gives them an advantage in the Tournament of Power. And the number one thing about this is that Android 17 had that creepy rape face that we've seen a lot of Dragon Ball characters in the past have. So I think a lot of this and what happened later on in the episode with Krillin foreshadows that we're definitely going to see a 17 and 18 team up in the future moving forward. But for the moment we've all been waiting for, let's talk about the action. Now, when it pertains to the action, one strong point would have to be the Botamo versus Vegeta fight. The entrance to this was awesome, as we see Vegeta charging towards Hit, as it's still being implied that Vegeta shares some animosity towards Hit for beating him in the Universe 6 tournament, and Botamo literally just comes in and becomes this big Winnie the Pooh shield for Hit to escape and go fight other characters. And I thought that that was great to break the ice between Universe 6 and 7, as we're seeing more direct conflicts between both of those universes. And I also think the most interesting part about this is that Botamo and Vegeta are now fighting, and Botamo was the only character in the Universe 6 tournament that did not fight against Vegeta, so it was good to see those two going at it. But the moment that really got to me, guys, would have to be when Vegeta turned Botamo into a ribbon. I felt that was a very silly and wacky way to add humor to Botamo's advantage, and the best part about this is that we see Magetta coming back to try and help out Botamo, and I think that really added a lot of fire to the competition, as Vegeta's fighting two characters on one now, and they're both much larger characters, which makes the stakes seem a lot higher for Vegeta. And the best part about this is that Beerus comes in and immediately starts trying to impact the competition by saying his weakness is to insult him. So Vegeta starts calling, Magetta a piece of junk, but then Botamo holds his ears, and I like how they call themselves Botamo and Magetta, and it really adds more fire to this whole battle royale battle in the entire Tournament of Power. So I thought that sequence was very well executed. And when we move on to the Krillin and Android 18 fight against the wolf-like character Shosha, I feel like that fight really demonstrated good teamwork. We see this as Android 18 was blindsided after she knocked Shosha down and she thought she had killed him, but Shosha blindsides her, is about to knock her out, but Krillin uses great awareness to bring her back to the stage. And where this fight really gets to me is when they were using that ping pong ki blast technique. I thought that was a pretty creative way to keep shooting ki blasts between Krillin and 18 at each other so that they would eventually hit Shosha. And I also liked how 18 and Krillin were saying how they had practiced that technique before, so it definitely seems like these characters were not wasting their time, and it shows good teamwork for the Tournament of Power. And the next Krillin and Android 18 fight we have is them fighting against Majora, and I think what was good about this scene here is that it takes a direct reference all the way back to Dragon Ball when Krillin was fighting against Bacterian in the 21st Tenkaichi Budokai. And if you guys remember, the way Krillin got out of that situation is that Goku, in a very comical way, says that Krillin doesn't have a nose, and Krillin used that as an advantage to not smell how bad Bacterian was and to eventually defeat him. And I think by kind of switching the scale here and having Krillin using his shoe as a stinky reference to throw it at this character in Majora, because Majora was definitely very sensitive towards bad smells, I thought that was a goofy but yet interesting way to have him lose in the Tournament of Power, as Krillin obviously finished him off with the Kamehameha. So I do like that direct reference all the way back to Dragon Ball. But in terms of the things that I think took away from the episode, as I've said before guys, I'm not a big fan of them wiping out the flying characters so easily, because the way the show was setting it up is it was trying to make the flying characters look like a different type of threat. And to tell you the truth, looking at the Tournament of Power roster, it seems like the only possible flying character that we have left would have to be the female demonic looking character. So I think that Dragon Ball Super missed out on a big opportunity here with increasing the difficulty curve with those flying characters. And I also think that the Taioken times 100, also known as the Solar Flare times 100, was way too much of a stretch. You mean to tell me that Majora seemed to have the perfect advantage of being blind while Krillin was using the one technique that affects people who actually have sight? And to not mention that Krillin didn't notice that this guy wasn't able to open his eyes and that it might not work, and he didn't consider that that technique can also possibly blind his other teammates in Tournament of Power who might having battles. And he also managed to grab Master Roshi's sunglasses and give them to 18 at that one particular point in time. I understand that it's all humor guys, but I think that that was a little too much of a stretch, and I understand that you can use my argument against me in saying that, well, wasn't Krillin's whole scent thing of using his stinky shoe a perfect advantage to defeat Majora? That's one situation, but that situation is different because that was a throwback all the way back to Dragon Ball, and Krillin improvised on the situation by realizing and learning how his opponent had a strong sense of scent. So that was more improvising as opposed to creating a perfect advantage and disadvantage. And to talk about a much bigger problem here guys, I'm not a big fan of power scaling. I don't really care about it that much, but I have to talk about this here. Is it just me, or is Dragon Ball Super scaling down Android 18 significantly compared to other characters? I mean, in that fight against Majora, I understand that, you know, they wanted to work together and Krillin had improvised a technique to stop him. But when you really think about it here, Krillin was holding his own with Majora by himself in terms of punches and kicks. And you would think that 18 should be light years above what Krillin was. So it definitely seems like Dragon Ball Super is making 18 a lot weaker than what she should be. And this is a little bit of a side conversation, but did this episode also confirm that despite the fact that 18 seems to have been downskilled in terms of power, that she also doesn't have the energy barrier the same way that Android 17 and Cell does? And the reason I say this is that when she was having her fight against Shosha and he blindsided her with all of those key blasts, that would have been the perfect time for 18 to have used her energy barrier technique, which she's used in a lot of video games, but she's never actually used it in the Dragon Ball series itself. So I think that kind of confirms that she can't do that same thing as 17, but I'll eat my words if she eventually uses it later down the line. And last but not least guys, the number one problem I had with this episode would have to be dealing with Krillin being knocked out by Frost. Now, hear me out. I don't mind Krillin losing because it creates tension if you take a member away, and it would also be boring if all Universe 7 fighters were all around after the Tournament of Power, so I can completely understand that you have to defeat somebody. The problem I had with the situation was that it seemed like a very cheap, unoriginal, and poor way to show the first character losing. Like, really? Krillin just got blindsided after Android 18 just got blindsided. It's like they're just forcing Krillin to lose so that we would now have a member out, and now it's like, okay, well, Universe 7 lost somebody, so now they have to be on their toes. But you know what? If Krillin's going to be the first to lose, that's fine, but come up with a better way to write him out than that. However, I will say Krillin's loss was justified, as at least he got some knockouts before he eventually went down. Moving on to our discussion point of this video for today, guys, here's a question for you. Who do you think is going to be the next Universe 7 character to lose? I personally think if you had to put my money on it, I would have to guess it's probably going to be Tien. I thought Tien was going to be the first to lose in the Tournament of Power as a whole, so by default, I'm going to say I think he's going to be the second to get knocked out, and then that will be followed by Master Roshi. But let me know what you think in the comment section below as to who you think is going to lose next, and give me your reasons as to why. And moving on to the episode 100 preview, guys, one thing that I see is really being emphasized for the next episode preview would have to be Goku versus Caulifla. They showed multiple scenes of Goku fighting against Caulifla, and there was even a scene where they like clashed against each other and they're smiling. So it definitely seems like Goku might not be trying to actually eliminate her, but he's actually trying more to have more of like a sparring match in such a big battle. And in addition to this, I think the number one thing that everybody's paying the most attention to the most would have to be Kale. So the episode just flat out shows Kale going into her berserk form that looks and resembles like a legendary Super Saiyan. And in addition to this, we also see Kale just going crazy and just shooting a lot of energy blasts at people. So if you guys know about spoilers, you know what's going to happen to Kale. And also seeing how Hit and Jiren are also in the mix with this too. So those characters definitely see they're going to be doing something in the episode itself. And last but not least, two more things that I noticed is that we see Android 17 fighting against the Universe 10 character who bears a very strong resemblance to Vega from Street Fighter. And the one thing I have to say about this is that it seems like Dragon Ball Super is now going in a direction where both Universe 4 and Universe 10 are going to be the next universes to be eliminated. So it's like they're going out of their way to show those characters doing that. And also, now Vegeta is all of a sudden fighting against Kaba. So this is telling me that if Vegeta is fighting against Kaba, that he probably either defeated Magetta or Botamo, or those characters moved on to fighting somebody else. So those are what I think a lot of what the spoilers are implying. But overall, guys, when it comes down to everything, I would have to give this episode 4 stars. The episode's purpose was to put Universe 7 on the fence by wiping out one of the characters that we already knew. However, because episode 98 was so epic and had so many things happening, it did do better than episode 98 in terms of making the Universe 7 characters be more involved, as episode 98 really just showed Goku and Vegeta fighting. But the video doesn't end here, guys, as the comment section is always an extension of what I have to say. And what did you think about episode 99 of Dragon Ball Super? Well, let me know in the comment section below, as I will be posting a poll in one of my cards on this video itself. So with everything else said, please remember to rate, comment, and subscribe. And remember, as I always say, to have a great day, guys.